So our guest today has been a working actor since they were 7.
Yeah, and
Did you even know what you wanted to do?
we're 40 something and still trying to do things. Yeah.
But did you even what did you want to do when you were a little kid? What did you want to do?
As far as I can remember, I've always wanted to be in.
I thought I was going to be Magnum PI or Top Gun or some shit. I wasn't going to be. It was obvious. Looking back, it was obvious that I had an active imagination to think I was going to be Magnum PI or
Yeah.
something. But I lived in an imaginary world.
Yeah, the first time I was on stage, I saw a video. My dad did anti-drug. He was a magician, and so he started going to Sunday schools and doing anti-drug messages, like showing a black cloth and like these are your sins, and he would turn it to a white cloth and Jesus would wash away your
Yeah,
sins.
yeah,
And he kept trying to. See, he was charismatic.
yeah.
And in his brain, he's like, well, you should just talk to people and everyone will love you, even if you're short and whatever.
Yeah.
And me, at the time, I. Anyways, I didn't like people. I didn't want to be in front of people.
You seem the same to me now, though. You don't.
I didn't want to be.
You don't like people. You don't want to be around people. What's changed? Well, you realized that when you grew up, you wanted to be okay to. You wanted it to be okay to hate people, and it seems like you've achieved your goal.
Well, I figured out that I could just I could have a personality for a couple hours and then turn it off.
I think it's a stretch. I've never seen you have a personality for a couple of hours. Maybe for a few minutes.
I made a movie on a VHS thing when I was a little kid.
Have I seen? I don't. I've
No,
never seen.
it got lost. It was on
Oh.
VHS, and somebody recorded over it. So
It got lost in the childhood
I
trauma.
played like a serial killer, like Halloween or whatever, that
Yeah.
you couldn't kill, and they threw me off the roof, and I did a quick cut. It was all in-camera editing.
Yeah.
So it had me on the roof, and then it quick cut to like a bunch of clothes stuffed with pillows and a hat, and they just threw,
Oh, the thing that people do when they're trying to
Yeah, it's
make
like-
it look like a low-budget crappy
Right.
film. You were doing that, yeah.
it's like pant legs and a shirt stuffed with things
Flapping in the wind.
onto the ground, and then quick cut to me.
Okay, everybody, quiet on the set.
Film Reverie, take 98.
And action.
Yeah.
Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Beckemeyer.
And I'm balding emo. Hold on, lower third. I did a lot of effort. There we go.
Yeah. And today we are joined by an actor, director, producer, editor. I tried to remember it in the right order that you said a few minutes ago. Emily Evan Rae, who we recently met at the Orlando International Film Festival through her documentary Stop the Bleed, which is a documentary about the story of Parkland. But she's also been an actor for, it seems like most of her life, really.
Yeah,
At this point. And so there's a lot of stuff to talk about. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
We're great. I'm so glad. I was just telling you before, this is like our first Film Reverie interview in a long time, year and a
Yeah.
half at least. So
Yeah.
we're happy to be back and have you be our sort of technical guinea pig, I guess. So we make sure we get our shake the dust off. So I guess to get started, just have it tell everybody a little bit who you are and maybe transition into your documentary.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Emily, as I said, and I am first an actress. I started acting and modeling really when I was really, really young. I started off in South Florida doing modeling. And at the age of 7, I convinced my mother to move me across the country to California to be an actor. And she said, sure, because everyone listens to their 7-year-old when they say they want to move across the country. So she did it. She took my sister and I across the country, and the two of us are actors. and we've been doing that our whole lives. And we didn't really plan on moving here completely permanently. It was kind of a back and forth thing for a while until my sister got her first show, Parenthood, and I started booking a bunch of like roles as a child, and we've just been here ever since. We just like realized one day, like, oh, I guess we live here permanently now.
Yeah.
So we've been doing that. I've been on really amazing sets. I've learned from a lot of really amazing people from being an actor and being in front of the camera. Learning about people from behind the camera has been amazing. Definitely a hands-on learning experience. And as I've grown up, I've kind of transitioned my way into being a little bit of a hyphenate, where I've been an actor, director, producer, editor, as we were saying before. And I did my first documentary. I directed, produced, and edited my first documentary called Stop the Bleed. It's on the Parkland school shooting that happened in South Florida. And that event really just struck a chord with me. So out of nowhere, I just decided, you know what, this is what I have to do. This is what I feel like I'm being called to do. And I feel like I need to tell these stories. So I did.
So first off, I'm sure a lot of people listening maybe haven't had a chance to see your documentary yet because how long have you been out with it? Like you've been working festivals and stuff
for about probably this year, I would say 2021 mostly. Yeah.
Okay, so your documentary is so. I don't even know. You don't even really know how to describe it because you were saying right before that some people were saying that it's too sad, but it's not. It's appropriately sad for what the subject matter is. It's not like what do people expect? People dancing in the streets, like.
Right? Like this is not some type of soap opera like musical thing. Like this is real. This is real life, and this is serious. And you know, how do you describe it? It's like it's different, I would say, than any documentary you would see about mass shootings, school shootings specifically. I would say because it really focuses on the aftermath, I would say, and the true pain that's felt by these people. And you don't really see that so often because so many times in an event like this, like after all the news media covers it all, they'll come away and then they'll forget to acknowledge that this is still living every single day in these people's lives, you know, and that's kind of what my documentary was to show what their life is like still.
I guess you really do get the like analysis and then the political upheaval that always comes with something like that. Yeah. But you're right, you don't really see. That's what was so magical. I guess if you could use that term about your documentary, magical about your documentary is that it's so intimately personal and it allows it's like bare bones really, and that's like a quality of it. That's not like that's not saying that it wasn't big budget or anything. It's bare bones people just confessing to the camera, and it's so it's raw and moving, and it's impossible to look away from at times. At one point, Brad and I were sitting there watching it. We were doing the live stream of the thing. We were sitting there watching it. And at one point, I almost started laughing because Brad threw his hands up and said, how am I supposed to work after this? And then left the room.
Yeah.
It's so, like, people were sobbing. People were crying.
It was making it hard for me to focus on the job I had.
Yeah.
And so what I was most curious about is how did you... first of all, what made you feel like you were the one that could tell that story? What drew you to, what made that your first film?
Well, my father's actually a police officer in Broward County, and that day he was actually off work, but then he got called in, obviously, because of the calamity that was happening. But he didn't go to the school. He actually went to the hotel, the Marriott, where all of the families, all 17 families, ended up being to find out what happened to their kid. And so he was there all night managing them. And he said after 30 plus years of being a police officer that was probably the worst day he's ever experienced, as you can imagine. And I just remember him telling me that very personal story and like the real emotions from that very moment. I mean, he's in the room where they're telling them that their loved one is gone. Like there's nothing worse than that. And so hearing that story from him, it really affected me personally. And at the time, I started this when I was 18. So I had freshly just graduated high school. So, you know, these are kind of like my peers. Like these are kids who are my age who are experiencing this, most of them, you know. And my sister's still in high school. And so it was very personal to me in that way.
Hmm.
And I just couldn't let it go. And I just one day was talking to a mentor of mine, and I was just like, maybe I can do something about this. Like maybe I can tell a story about it. Like I'm from there. Like why not? Why not try to see if there's something that I can do? And I went home. I told my mom, I was like, I think I want to do a documentary on this, and I did it. And so
And I did it. The interesting, well, not interesting thing. The thing about it is that people clam up when they get on camera for the first time. They get nervous in front of the camera. I felt none of that with your subjects, your people you had in the documentary with you, people you were talking to. How much convincing, or how did you convince them that to trust you, I guess, to bare their souls so freely
mhm.
and openly and so personally, I guess, is like they were telling deep. Some of them are so honest and so. Sorry, my cat's about to sit on the keyboard. Jeffrey Lebowski, everybody. So just open book, honest with you and vulnerable. And I mean, most of them were crying most of the time. And I was like, the level of trust you had to gain with your subjects, especially as a young person who has never made a documentary before or a film or anything, and I don't know how many of them actually knew that while you were doing it, but you were like figuring it out as you went along too. You were like, I heard you say you didn't really understand how to use the camera at first. You were learning as you went. So how did you work with them to get them to that point? That's so
Yeah.
impressively honest place.
Well, thank you so much. But it was really interesting because, like I said, I was 18 years old when I started.
Hmm.
This is the worst thing that's ever happened to them in their lives,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
um, sharing that so vulnerably is hard to do. And I'm super grateful and honored that they trusted me to do that in the first place. Like,
yeah,
first,
yeah.
I just I really appreciate that because I think that it was able to do good storytelling and was able to tell what they had on their hearts, you know. But I would say that they were able to trust me because I made an open conversation. I didn't go into it with an agenda. I went
Hmm.
into it wanting to tell their stories. I didn't want to tell any version of their stories that was
Yeah.
mine. It was mostly them. So what I did when I first interviewed them is I sat them down. I had a conversation with them prior to filming. Like
Hmm.
I communicated with them on one, me personally, and so they knew who I was. I gave them my background. I let them know that hey, I'm an actor, I'm a filmmaker, and this is the kind of story that I want to tell.
Hmm.
If you're interested, if you're comfortable, I would love to speak with you. I'd be honored to speak with you. And if not, no worries. Like whatever you want off the table, you let me know, and I'm happy to make a combination
Hmm.
of accommodations for whatever you need to feel most comfortable. And then they got there, and I had everything set up. And I would say, look, you tell me what happened that day from point A to point B.
Hmm.
So what happened the first moment that you found out that morning, all the way till right now where we were, which filming was about for most of the interviewees about 4 months after it happened. So it's still very fresh, very, very
Yeah.
fresh.
How
Um,
long? I'm sorry. How long did you
it was
say?
about for most of the interviews, it was about 4 months after the
Okay.
shooting
Okay.
actually happened
Yeah.
that I went out to film with
Yeah.
them.
So
Um,
I mean, it just happened.
yeah, it was really
That stuff doesn't. It's like, oh, that was 3 months ago. I'm over it now. It's not like,
right.
yeah,
No, 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 no. It was very still fresh,
yeah.
fresh on the mind, and that was for most of them. Some people I had like about a year later, but most of them I would say it was 4 months. And so I had them sit there, and I said, tell me what you want to say. Tell me what you love about this person. Tell me what you
Hmm.
know about them. Tell me what it was like that morning because it was Valentine's Day. You know, tell me what you found out and tell me how it is now for you, how it is for your family. And I
Hmm.
let them just free range. Like I said nothing. I let them just speak. And then after they were done talking, they had nothing left to say. I then just started having a genuine conversation with them at that
Hmm.
moment. It was just so honest and so raw. And um, they were so truthful and so kind to me. Like, you know, I think we were able to have I have great relationships with a lot of these families, and they still support me and I support them, which is
Yeah.
such a good thing for us. Like Lori Alhadef, like when I went to her house, she's wonderful, absolutely
Hmm.
wonderful. She let me go upstairs to see her daughter's room.
Yeah. 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 That
See some
she is that the one that hadn't changed the room
Yeah.
since? Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her and she didn't change it, and neither did Luke Hoyer's mother, Gina
Yeah.
Hoyer. She didn't change his room
How
either.
do you like just think put yourself there? Like how do you like I have an 18-year-old daughter. She had just turned 18. She just graduated from high school. I was thinking, and I teach high school, so I'm around kids of that exact same age. I'm a TV production teacher, so I of that exact same age, and I see my students and my daughter and my in these people. Like I was listening to it, I was thinking that could just have easily have been any of us, talking about that thing or being thrust in that thing. And I don't know how anybody could change the room. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's actually
Yeah.
quite interesting that you say that, that you see a lot of people and how it could have easily just been
Yeah.
you. Um, Interestingly enough, sort of off topic, but while I was editing this documentary, I go line dancing, and my line dancing bar goes that I go to every single week actually was victim of a mass shooting as well in the middle
Oh
of
my
doing.
God.
Yeah,
Were you
and
there? Were you there?
I wasn't there.
Oh,
I
okay.
I last minute choice. I decided not to go. I never missed a week except for that one weekend, which was super crazy and random. But I was
In
totally ready to go, and I was supposed to go, but then last minute I changed my mind. Um, but I'm sitting here doing this documentary about something so important and so powerful, and I think in a way it happened to my community that I lived in when I like where I was from originally. My
yeah.
family was from there, but it didn't happen to me. But then in the middle of this, it did happen to me. It did happen to my
Mhm.
community, very closely. I'm, very into that borderline community,
Mhm.
that line dancing community. And so it was really crazy to have it actually happen in real life to you personally.
I thought about because we a couple years ago at my school we had it's tragic. We had a kid during a fire drill commit he shot himself. Like he knew the fire drill was coming and he waited till the fire drill when everybody was outside, gun to his head, and then in front of like high schoolers and I have students that are I have students that were not even anywhere near it, all the way on the other side of the campus that still have nightmares about that day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just that one. I don't want to say just that one, but you know what I mean. It wasn't anything like a mass shooting with somebody walking around with like an AK-47 shooting people. It was
Yeah.
just like an isolated incident, and it was horrible and awful. But I don't understand how we could even calculate the trauma that comes out of it, or how people would grieve or deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that I think that the one thing that I got a sense of from your documentary is that you gave them an opportunity to tell their family member's story
Mm-hmm.
and to um, what's the word? I can't think of the right word, Brad. Oh, he
I
can
don't
never think
know.
of anything to
Nope.
say anyway. Anyway, to just to tell the story and I don't know, keep them alive in a way. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. Like, I don't even know how you spent so much time with them because everybody. I think when people are going through like a grandmother dies or dad passed away or some sort of tragedy, you don't ever really know what to say to them.
Yeah.
So very often people stay away from it and don't say anything,
Yeah.
which is not the right thing. The right thing to maybe not the right thing to do.
Right.
So, but you spent so much time with these people who are going through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you feel like you weren't going to say the wrong thing or ask a wrong question? Just like
Yeah.
you never want to. You want to never. Here's my thing: when somebody's going through something, I'm thinking I should check in on that person, but I never want to say, "Hey, how you doing?" on a day when they're having a good day, and now I've brought it all back up just by me checking on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I can overthink the situation into the point where I just like you don't know what to say.
Here's what I would say is that, especially for the parents, I would say that there's not a moment that they're not thinking about it.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
get dinner and they may be having a great time at dinner with their family, but there's still an empty seat at that table. Their daughter, their son, their husband should still be there.
yeah,
It's so painful every single day. You like I think Tony says it in the documentary. It's a quote. He's like, you move on, but you're never moving past the situation.
yeah.
And I think that's the most true statement that's said about losing somebody like this. But again, it's hard because what are you supposed to say? And it's
What can
exactly
you
what
say?
Debbie Hickson says in the documentary. And I think why I put it in there was so incredibly powerful, because I just did it myself. I said, it's hard to lose somebody, but they didn't lose this person.
Yeah.
They didn't lose this person. This
Yeah.
person was murdered. Their loved one was murdered. They didn't
Yeah.
go into a building and get lost, like Debbie said.
Right.
So it's like, how
Yeah.
do you walk around that? How do you have a conversation about that? The truth is that they're thinking about it 24/7 anyways. It's their loved one, it's their daughter, it's their son, it's their husband, you know?
Yeah.
It's tragic. And I think the best thing to say is just to know that you're there for them. And I think that's why I've created such a good relationship with families like the Montaltos and the Hoyers and Hicksons, because they know that I have their back always. And like, I know that they have my back, and we are here to remember their loved ones as more than just a victim, because that so often happens that so many people don't remember the victims of this tragedy, and the perpetrator is remembered. It's nowhere in the documentary did I mention the shooter. I didn't think it was necessary, and no reason to give him any more stature than he needs to be having.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to remember that these kids and teachers were amazing people in their community. Remember what they were known for, why they were so loved, you know, who they were as people, more than just victims of a horrible accident. That's one incident. What about the rest of their lives they had, you know?
Yeah, I was one of the things that I was asking Mike when we watched it, which is I have to how it's just amazing to me. First of all, like the bravery to be in the room with them and ask them those questions, and then to tell yourself, because when you're doing that, you have to just go ahead and just hit the raw nerve and ask the questions and get it out, because you need to tell the story. But my question is, even how do you maintain yourself during the interviews, but also you have to sit there in post-production and you have to watch every second of the footage
1,000 times,
and then you have to make logical, non-emotional decisions of how to edit it together, and then keep yourself together and not just go into depression. How do you just not go crazy? How do you keep it? You know what I'm saying? How do you keep yourself together while you're editing it during the whole process?
Well, it was a really long editing process. The filming itself for each interview probably took about an hour per interview, I'd say, give or take. But that was a long hour for each and every single one of them. It was painful and hard. You know, I was in a professional setting. I had to be focused. I had to know that, look, there's no room for error. There's no margin for error in this type of content, especially for my first documentary. I cannot make a mistake. You know, this has to be as perfect as it can be for me and as perfect as it can be for them. So I had no room to be unprofessional. I had no room to even think about myself or what I was feeling in that moment. I had to pour all my energy into making sure that this was being done right. So in the moment for the interviews, it wasn't too hard for me to keep it together, because I needed to make sure that I was professional. I was doing what I needed to be done. I was laser focused. I was the director. I knew it needed to be done, and I got it done. As far as editing, it was long and it was hard, and it was so sad and tragic. And I feel bad for my family too, because I'm sitting in my house like playing these clips over and over. Listening to them, and my sister's listening to them. And everyone that comes to my house is like listening to, like, you know, like as I'm like sitting there editing 24/7, like all virtual.
Yeah, because I mean the 911, the 911 call. You know that's actually really happening. Those things. So it's not.
Do you know how many I listen to? How many 911 I listen to? It's just it's not any easier every single time you listen to it. It's painful every single time. You know that there's a job.
Yeah. So how did you have to take mental breaks, or how did you maintain the long?
I did have to take mental breaks. You know, I would go a week and I would start from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. and I would edit all day, go through footage all day, because I mean at first there's just like so many hours of footage. Whole thing over and over again. Write notes, go back, write notes, make sure I didn't check anything. You know what I mean? Just like mulling over it a million times. And I would go like weeks without like taking a break, and then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, like I'm getting overwhelmed right now. Like this is becoming a lot. And I'm a very in my normal life, I'm a very happy-go-lucky person. I'm very
Yeah.
joyful.
Yeah.
Like I'm not the type of person who, you know, delves into very harsh and deep and
Yeah.
sad stuff. That's just not who I am by nature. And so it was really hard for me to have to hear it all day, every day. But I did have to take a couple breaks. I knew that I couldn't wear myself out, and I needed to also take a break too, so I can come back with fresh eyes, so I could see what I
Yeah.
wasn't seeing before. Because you get blind to it, and you
Yeah.
need to take that break in order
Yeah.
to edit it properly. And that's what I've learned for sure is like getting fresh eyes on that after seeing it over and over. You think
Yeah.
it's perfect, and you're like, give it a second, give it a week or two, come back, and you're like, oh, there's a million more mistakes. Let me go back
That's
and redo it.
That's true with every creative process. It's
Mhm.
even more true with documentary filmmaking. We made a doc once about our friend Morris who passed away. He had sickle cell anemia, and I got to tell you, I we did one afternoon of interviews with some of his friends, some of his other friends, and I came home from that day, and he had been passed away 10 years at that point. I came home that day just with an afternoon of interviews and sobbed.
Mhm.
I mean, he was my friend too. Well, I personally knew him, so I was like part of the story in a way.
Mhm.
But I was thinking about that today while I was out getting ready to talk to you, and I was thinking, I was a mess from one afternoon of talking to people about the happy stuff that we remember about our friend. We nobody had to go in and talk about a mass shooting or anything like that. Your subjects, I don't even want to call them subjects. Your what do you call them? The families,
The
friends?
interviewees, the
Yeah,
families,
yeah, yeah. Were so articulate in their grief. Maybe it's because it was so fresh and it wasn't, it's not like it happened yesterday, but it happened a few months back, and they'd had time to sit in it for a while. They all spoke so clearly about, there was, and I wish I'm trying to remember some of the things that people said in your documentary that I was like, that hit me like a brick. It was like, that is so human and honest and true, and you would only ever come to some of these perspectives by having lived through what somebody like your in your doc like lived through,
yeah.
where they were so articulate in their grief, and they had such unique perspective. There was the mom, I think, who was it, there was hair in a brush or something, I'm trying to
Yes,
remember.
Lori
And
Allen.
I was like, that got me. I was like, holy shit.
She was trying to keep the smell.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
smell of the kid, and it's like, ah, God, because everybody's left a day with somebody that you like and go, oh, my shirt still smells like them, you know.
Yeah.
But thinking of it in a, it's not like you can go hang out with them again and renew the thing, like you want to like press pause
Absolutely.
forever, you know.
It's the thing about these families and these people who experience this is that I think the beautiful thing about it and why I made it so true was because they are just real people. You
Yeah,
know, they're not actors. They're not used to being in front of the camera up until this point. You know what I mean? Like they are not the type to put on a show. They're just expressing their real life. And you
yeah,
can see that through Lori for sure, like you said in that thing. I
yeah.
think for me and what I felt the most deep about that moment was when she tried to put her hands on her body to warm her up because she wanted to bring her back to her life.
Yes, oh
Mother.
my God, that broke my
I do not
heart.
understand how that is. You know what I mean? Like that's a logical. Like I understand that. I see that she's a mother. She's
Yeah,
a
she said,
mom.
"I'm her mom. I was
Yeah.
trying to." That broke my heart, and I
Yep.
started crying again. I must have cried 10 times, like if I ever stopped at all. I was sitting next. Nobody where I was sitting was. I was there with some of my students, and my student was looked at me like, "What did you bring me to?" Because she
Yep.
was sobbing, and we were just like, "This, you know."
It's really tough. It's hard. It's hard to watch it a bunch of times over. And I know my family has seen it a million times. I've just
Yeah,
given them every single cut imaginable. But my grandparents, they watch it a million times over to give me notes and just to check it out, you know. And my grandpa says that every single time he sees it, there's something new that strikes a chord with him. Like there's
yeah,
something that he didn't realize the last time that really sticks with him. I think it's so true because you don't realize how raw and authentic these people are in their grief. It's I like
yeah,
to say the documentary is an essay on grief. It really explains what it's
yes,
to be going through
yeah,
an experience that causes grief. And
yeah,
this documentary really shows that fully
yeah,
through,
yeah,
with no agendas in it, which I think made it
yeah,
the most honest version.
yeah.
And we were able to be the most honest about it as well.
It really is, and it's hard to even say. It's hard to even say. Well, it's a great documentary. You should go watch it. Because you.
Right.
It's kind of like, yeah, let's go like morbidly celebrate these people's suffering
Hmm.
for an hour and a half or however long. What is it like? It's
An hour. It's an
it's
hour,
an
but
it's
it
an
is
hour.
really tough. And that's what
Yeah.
I wanted to do as a very strict director's choice. Is in the beginning, we go through and we really see all of the kids and teachers who um, lost their lives, and you kind of learn a little bit about them. Like
Yeah.
you learn that like Luke loved to go to eat chicken nuggets at McDonald's, and
Yeah. Yeah.
Alyssa was a great soccer player, and Joaquin loved to play basketball, and all these different things about these people because they are people. They're not
Mhm.
victims of a tragedy only.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it was a long segment at first because there's just so much content about who they are as people, and I really wanted to
Yeah.
keep that as much as I could, that essence as much as I could, because I think it was so important to have that aspect in there,
Hmm.
and really be able to experience who they were and who they are still, and then see what was taken from the world.
Yeah.
It's hard and it's tragic
Yeah.
and it's sad, but you need to see that in order to understand the grief.
Hmm. Yes. I totally. Um, it was your. It's so. Your story was not heavy handed in any way.
Mhm.
You really did let. I mean, you really did become invisible as the filmmaker. It wasn't your. I mean, it really feels like you intentionally were not telling your story, your
Mhm.
perspective on the thing. It were these people who were the only ones that could tell that story because they were the only ones that had actually lived it. So it's just it's impressively simple.
Mhm.
So many of us, I've done it. Every filmmaker out there has done this and like I'm gonna this is my filmmakery moment. This is where we're gonna like this and that and zigzag and blow something up, and it's so easy to ramp it up somehow, like bring in some music and like make it swell and all this stuff. But you did not really do any of that. You just sat there perfectly still with the camera and let these people tell their very upsetting, very true
Mhm.
stories. And it's, but you feel so connected to it because it's so true and it's so purely honest,
Mhm.
and the human condition and the human existence.
Yeah.
It's just, um, yeah. Even when you were there with one of the parents, and I can't remember his name.
Tony Montalto.
Yeah, and I was I was talking. I remember standing there talking to you, and like I was nervous about talking to him. It's like you don't really know how to approach him, and you just watched this documentary where everybody poured their heart out, like
Mhm.
right in front of you. I was like, "Hey, you did great. You were great up there." It's
Well,
like, what?
here's what I told them. I told them literally just when we were at that film festival, because I've known Tony for a while now. But I
Mhm.
told them, I was like, dude, when I first met you, you scared me. I was very scared of you. And
Yeah,
it's just like, look what a little fear does. Look what a little fear can do, because
yeah,
you're able to just do it so honestly. And I want to go back really quick to what you had said before about um, kind of being invisible. I spent a lot of time with my composer, and she's amazing, Star Parody. She's
hmm,
phenomenal. Her
hmm,
husband's incredible too. They were both super helpful. And they were really great at their craft. But
hmm,
we talked a lot about giving that space where there was an empty silence, there was no music, so you can really
hmm,
intentionally hear the words that are being said and have it really make that point, because the words speak for themselves. Sometimes the music helps and it, like, fuels that emotion,
hmm.
but a lot of times having nothing at all and just hearing the story and just letting that ruminate with you really makes an impact.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could sit here and talk about it for a long time. What
Yeah.
made you? What it must have been percolating in your mind a little bit that you wanted to step behind the camera somehow before that ever happened. Like, what was it? You've been acting for what, 10, 12 years, something like that at that point.
Yeah.
What was going on in the back of your mind that made you think, I think I might want to direct? Or
Well, like I said kind of earlier when I was a little introducing myself, is that I have a really unique experience, is that I was able to be in front of the camera and learn a lot from the people
no.
from behind the camera. Um, as you might know, I have been on a lot of really incredible television shows, and I've been
Dude,
able to.
she
Um,
played she played young Kate on Lost.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't know that.
yeah.
There you
I didn't
go.
know it either until I just digged around in our Instagram a little bit and
Yeah.
Oh,
saw some of
wow.
her. Yeah.
But that's the
Yeah.
crazy thing is, an amazing show like Lost, an amazing show like my sister's show Parenthood. I'm able to be on set and
Mhm.
learn from the directors. The director on Lost, Jack Bender, he's incredible. He
Yeah.
was such a good director. And at a young age, I was on that show, but I could recognize that. I
Mhm.
recognized what made him a good director. I was on set for my sister's show on Parenthood, and Jason Kadams, who's the showrunner, and Larry Trilling, who's one of the directors and producers, like they're incredible at what they do. They know what they're doing. They're so knee deep in their craft, and they know how to make a well-oiled machine on set, and you can tell the difference between someone who is really good at what they do versus somebody who is just kind of a control freak. And so I learned a lot from
Mhm.
these really amazing people who are so well established in their career, and I was kind of able to shadow them in a way because my sister's on set for 6 years on Parenthood, and I was able to sit behind the camera in a way. Like I was on the show for a little while, but I was also able to sit in the background while she was working and observe every single avenue that happened on set, from directors to script supervisors to
Wow.
scripts
Yeah.
to lights.
What a great
It was,
opportunity.
it was such a great learning experience,
Yeah.
and that I think has inspired me a lot and taught me a lot in being a director.
Was there something about documentary that spoke to you specifically, or did you just jump at the opportunity to do something you felt you could do?
I jumped at the opportunity for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to doing a feature scripted
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
I'm not scared of adding writer to my hyphen.
Oh,
I have a mentor who's an amazing writer, and she writes for shows, and she's somebody who's really great to look to
mhm.
for future projects when that's the time. But yeah, I just jumped at this opportunity. I realized that this is something that I could do. I believed that I could do it, and I'm really grateful that I did, and that people trusted me too.
You've said something a couple of times that sort of just in passing while answering a question that I feel like a lot of people miss is that you have mentors. You have people that you trust who I guess you go to so talk about the benefits in your career or life of having mentors. So many of us like miss that part of it, and we get stuck on thinking if we ask for help, it means we are not good enough or something.
No, I would not be where I am without my mentors. They are incredible people. I owe a lot to them. They have taught me so much about this business. They know so much. One of them is the head of post production, and one of them is a writer, like I mentioned, an executive producer and
Mhm.
showrunner. And they are so smart. They know so much, and they know me so well, and they know what I'm capable of, and they know how I learn, and they teach me a lot. They helped me tremendously through this documentary. They encouraged me to do this documentary, and having my one mentor who's in post production helped me tenfold edit this. I was at her house for literally like
I'm telling you, documentary editing is like the hardest. It's
Yeah,
like for you
no,
to have never done it before and then you did a documentary first is it's daunting because there's an infinite variations of what you
Yeah.
could cut together.
But
you don't have your own puzzle. You don't have a
Yeah.
you don't have a vision.
so that brings up a question for me. So, because I don't know, I thought that you just jumped in there and did it all yourself. So, how did the post production work? Did you have to do the logging and or did this person that helped you do rough cuts and you came in and made changes, or how did that work?
So I did it all myself. What my mentor did was she would watch the cuts and give me notes, and then
Oh, okay.
Advise. Mentors don't do their own editing.
yeah, no.
Mentors advise.
She made me
Okay.
do the hard work. She made me do the dirty work. She gave me a lot.
Oh,
She's like, you gotta cut this. You gotta cut this. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you sure I have
Yeah.
to cut this? And she's like, it's gotta go. And I'm like, okay. And I went back and I redid it.
wow.
Um,
What about the other post production stuff? Did like I don't know, coloring and the look of the film? Did you do that too?
I actually was super, super great. I am super grateful that I had a lot of people who wanted to help on this documentary because of subject matter. A lot of people were just really willing to help. They understood that this was a very independent project. They understood that I had zero budget other than the money that I made from doing side jobs, like
Yeah.
babysitting every so often, and like whatever money I had saved up. And so they knew that it was a very one woman show. And
Yeah.
the people who did my color correcting, who are incredible, they actually happen to be friends of my mentor, and they heard about it. My mentor told them about it, and they were like, you know what, like I trust her, and let me do this for you. I believe in the subject matter. Like, let me just do it for you. And they did it out of the kindness of their heart. Like and they're incredible. They do like amazing shows. Like they're well-known people. So I was like,
wow.
With my composer, same thing with Eric Toline. He gave me my audio equipment. Same thing with my cinematographer, who came for a part of it. Some of it was me, but some of it was also my cinematographer, Damien Tufaro. He's incredible. I met him randomly, and he also felt the same thing. He's like, just give me a flight in Florida, and I'm happy to be there and do it with you. So it was really a labor of love, and a lot of people who just wanted to help and be a part of it. So it was very much a woman show, but at the same time, it was a lot of people who were willing to do something for the cause of it.
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of a director of photography or anyone to help with shots or camera at all?
She just said she had a cinematographer.
Yeah, so
okay.
He came for a couple of days. Damien Tufaro, his name is, and he's incredible, and I love him so much. He's so kind and very good at what he does. And I did a lot of the interviews on my own, but we went around and did B-roll, and he taught me some stuff. And you never really get as much knowledge as you do from learning from a professional. So I really appreciate his being there.
Yeah. So did you do the audio yourself too?
I got the equipment, and then I did the audio myself.
Yeah.
Well, because it looked and sounded so good.
Thank you. It was a big fear of mine.
It's so hard to believe that was you had to have some experience doing some of those things before.
I did take a couple of courses. I did do a film program where I learned about the basics of Premiere. I learned about the basics of how to work a camera. I learned the basics of editing and writing in a script. And we basically, like, it was like a 3-week program, and I each week we made our own shorts and we helped each other out. So like one day I was on sound for somebody else's filming. The other day I was helping with camera, somebody else, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Flipped it around, but everything was actually, when it was actually time for filming, I did the audio. I was in charge of it in the headphones. For editing, I was in charge of logging. I was in charge of actually doing it.
That's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot to be worried about when you're just doing it, but when you're doing the shooting, the sound, and asking all the questions and taking care of your subjects, it's a lot. And just knowing how to use the equipment doesn't mean you're good at it.
Right.
So the fact that you were able to do that, and in post-production with the editing and stuff, because just knowing, I have students who are very good at using the software, but they still struggle with the storytelling part. With the storytelling part of the storytelling part, the storytelling part of using the equipment. The equipment is a tool, not necessarily mean you're a great editor.
And the thing is too, juggling 5 things at once, it opens up the door to making a mistake on something. Like you forget something with audio, or you miss something in your shot, or you didn't ask a question you wanted to ask. So it's amazing that you were able to juggle everything and pull that off.
I was really lucky. I had a friend of mine and my aunt come down with me to Florida, and they were kind of like my little assistants, and they carried the bags for me, and they supported me and did that. But I really did. I was really the head charge of whatever.
Yes, you were the one.
It was a lot. And it was a lot for being so young. It was a lot for the subject matter. And that was like kind of where I was able to hyper focus, like I was saying earlier, like all the things that were happening, all the chaos that was going on, like all of it was went away at the end. I said I knew what I had to do and I needed to focus. And just seeing the set that I had in my Airbnb, like to make the audio, like there was big ceilings. So I was like, oh gosh, what am I gonna do? I had like huge mattresses up on the side to try to like fill this, like blankets and pillows everywhere. Just like, please, like keep the sound and the echo at a minimum. So I'm glad. Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot.
It really doesn't feel like a first time effort. It really doesn't.
Thank you.
Because I've seen a lot of those, and I made one of those too, and it didn't look or sound as good as your thing. My thing was a piece of shit, the first one. In fact, no one's ever gonna see it. you know, because of that. But and we had way more help doing that first one, and it's still
Yeah.
not, it still wasn't great. So
A lot
that's
learning
impressive.
first one, that's for sure. There's things that I've learned on this documentary that
Yeah,
I'm taking into the rest of my
yeah,
career.
yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. What about so what about how did you get started? What when you said you started as an actor and a model,
Yeah.
actress and a model, but like what if if there's somebody out there listening who wants to know, I have one of our friends, Anthony, who moved out to LA about 6 months before the everything got shut down. So he came back to Florida to ride out the storm. He just hasn't left yet. He's about to. But if you somebody like that who's moving, who wants to go get started in New York or LA and or anywhere really, and start working as an actor, what are some tips of the trade? What are some things that you advice you give to people?
I would say if you can do anything else in the world, do it. But if there's nothing else in the world that will fulfill your
Yeah,
heart and
yeah,
nothing else in the world that will make you satisfied and
yeah.
happy, your creativity come out, you have to go. There's no choice. Like, it's a really tough business. You have to have persistence.
Hmm.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You don't just walk in and boom, you get lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Very rarely does that ever happen. You need to know that this is a career for the long haul. You need to put in the
Hmm.
work, and if you're not willing to do it, then
Hmm.
don't bother. So if you can really, if there's anything else you can do, do it. But if this is what you're meant to do, if you know
Hmm.
in your heart of hearts that this is something that you need to do, like I know creatively there's nothing else in this world that I could do than be in this
Hmm.
business. I have to be here. As struggle as it is all the time, and as hard as it is, I'm not willing to give up on that. You
Yeah.
have to.
What about it's always because I know how producers or even agencies or anything like that. I know how cold and just just plain business they can be about actors or clients
Yeah.
or that part of the business. I always feel almost like sad for child actors because they they lose their innocence so much younger. There, I was watching. Did you watch the Soleil Moon Frye documentary?
I did
It's
not, but
it's on
I know of it.
It's on Hulu. I think I watched it. I was just curious. She some of the stuff that she was exposed to as a 6 7 year old kid
Mhm.
is or even Drew Barrymore one of
Yeah.
that story where it's just like you're exposed to people's like dark sides way more and like they're control freak, their cruelty, they're saying things like too like they were telling her she was too fat when she's like 8.
Yeah.
How do you tell an 8 year old they're too fat? An 8 year old isn't too fat, an 8 year old is 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Or too skinny. It's like none of that stuff. I don't know how anyone survives that process with any positive disposition such as yourself. You like her film company. Can we say your film company's name?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, Pixie Ray Productions.
Oh, okay. Because
Yeah,
her
yeah.
your
It's
Gmail
Ray
was
Sunshine Films
yeah
also.
yeah 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 yeah. So
Mhm.
Ray of Sunshine, she's like pleasant. She seems like to have it together, and she's not like racked with like
The
all the
child
memories of people
trauma.
rejecting an 8 year old. It's like what
Yeah,
the
well, that's the
fuck.
thing about child actors. You got to give them some more credit than they get. I would say.
Yeah.
I'm biased, but what I would say is that child actors are expected to be children acting as adults in an adult world.
Yeah.
The thing that I learned the most and the thing that I'm super grateful for is that I'm able to, and I probably wouldn't be this way without it, is that I am able to walk into a room and I can have a conversation with anybody because that's how it was for so many years as a child.
Yeah.
Like when my sister was on Parenthood, we would go to like these NBC parties and, these parties for the show.
Mhm.
And I was at the time probably like 12, 13. And, at 12 and 13 years old, what the heck do you have to say to somebody who's 30 years into their career, very much established, who knows what they're doing? You
Mhm.
need to go in there with confidence. I got a lot of my confidence from being a child actor. It's really tough to make that transition from a child actor to an adult actor. But
Mhm.
the thing about it is, yes, there's a lot of rejection. Yes, there's a lot of naysayers, and there's a lot of people who will doubt you and who will doubt, the talent that you may have at such a young age. But you got to know that you have it. You got to know that it's in
Mhm.
you, and you need to have that confidence and that resilience because persistence is key. And I've learned that so well throughout this, and I'm so grateful for all the no's that I had to make the yes so much greater.
Yeah.
But it is tough for a lot of child actors out there. It's tough, it can be for a lot of people deteriorating to
Yeah.
their confidence and to their mental health. But you got to kind of push through that and know that there's one thing that my mom always said to me. My mom has been amazing about it. She really let me be, my sister and I, be kids in this adult world. But she always told me, she's like, okay, so she had my sister and I draw in a coloring book the exact same picture. And I drew mine with green and my sister drew hers with pink. And she was like, why did you pick green? Why did you pick pink? I was like, oh, I like green better. And my sister's like, oh, well, I like pink better. And I was like, that's how it is with acting. One person might like green, one person might like pink, and that's okay. You might not be perfect for this role, but you'll be great for somebody else's, and
Hold
that's
on a
all.
second. Is your mom an actor?
No, God, no.
How does she know that? How did she know that? How did she
It
fucking
had
know
nothing
that?
to do with this
That's
business.
incredible. That's incredible advice.
Oh, she's an incredible person.
Yeah.
She wanted nothing to do with this business. She's like the most anti-stage mom in the world. Like she
Right.
was like, if this is what you want to do, if this is what you want to be creative, go with it. But if you're ready to quit, if you want to not go to a casting for a birthday party, fine, whatever. She was so chill about it, and that's what made it's such an enjoyable experience for me still. But she knows so much. She's so knowledgeable, and she's taught me a lot, and probably what made this business much more fun than it is.
Yeah. That is such simple and true advice.
Mhm.
Just remember that, Brad.
Some people like green, and some people.
That's
like
true with everything. It's not even a creative thing or an artistic thing or why didn't you get a job? It's like life, dating,
Yeah.
jobs,
It's
anything.
all relative. It's all perspective.
Yeah,
You might fit somewhere else in somebody else's picture so much better than you do in this one that you think that you're perfect for right now. So.
What most people don't realize is that we all start out thinking that the way we think and the way we see things is how everyone else should see things and how everyone else should think. And we don't realize that it's important that everyone has their individuality, and we need to stop trying to make everyone be like us.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely. There's a big world out there. There's a lot of space for all of us,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, so many people are drawn towards entertainment because of the superficial parts, like fame or money or hey, I get to be in charge or any of that stuff. And so, the behind the scenes fact is that the the business will destroy those parts of you or take advantage of those parts of you and eat your soul.
Yeah, sort of like it destroys the innocent part of you and you become jaded.
And so there's so many adults who couldn't handle things that like an 8-year-old, you said you were 7, I think, when you moved up.
Yeah.
So like a 7-year-old couldn't handle, and even as elegantly as you seem to have done. It reminds me of that little girl in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Do you see that movie?
No, but I know it. I auditioned for that once.
You auditioned for that one.
That was a rejection.
So there's this little girl talking to Leonardo DiCaprio, and she's like reading her book, and she's off book, she's got her lines and everything. She's just very calm and professional. And Leonardo DiCaprio's character is sort of a struggling, he's having an ego crisis, and an existential crisis of a artistic variance, and he's just like a nervous wreck. He's like drinking and smoking, and she's just like, what's going on? I'm just reading this book about this thing, and she's so confident and calm.
Yeah,
it's my favorite scene in the movie.
It was so good. It's one of those things that Tarantino would drop in a film.
Right.
That's like, it doesn't really have anything to do with anything, but it's a great conversation, and it's about everything at the same time.
100%. I see that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Well, if I can't, number one, I can't wait to see what you do next, but also I wish you and your documentary well. It's an important story.
Everyone needs to see
it.
This.
Just to, I feel like sometimes people say to me, Beckmar, why do you like all of that? The stuff, like you were saying, like the stuff that's like, you said you're more of a happy-go-lucky sort of person. Some people have more of a bent toward, but I will sit and watch things that are about unhappy topics, I guess you could say, because I feel like, sort of, if nothing else, we sort of owe it to people who lived through it to listen to them, to listen to their stories and see for an hour, see what it felt like, so that you can carry that with you and not be so callous or just whatever the word is, like just flicking nonchalant about something that's like so heartbreaking, really, and complicated topic. And I know you stayed away. You did very good at staying away from all the political parts of it, the elements of should we, shouldn't we, all that stuff. I know that when you watch that, that's, to me, that's more convincing on any other side. Listening to people talk about their suffering is way more convincing than somebody getting in front of a camera and screaming, because then you're dealing with that person's ego, how it's affecting my ego and all this stuff. But if you're just truly listening to somebody, which is why so few people listen, I think, because they're worried about being affected by somebody else's honesty, you know?
It's true.
So you did an incredible job of bringing that out in your story.
Right.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see what happens with your doc. I hope it does well.
Also,
everywhere else.
not. I mean, what do you have? Do you know what you might want to do next, or anything?
Yeah.
Action, comedy, rom-com, something.
I'm a sucker for watching action movies. And I would love to play in an action movie setting.
Yeah.
My dream in my life is any Alias fans out there, to be Sydney Bristow would be my dream. But as far as me directing, currently right now in this timeline, I would say that I'm busy writing. I'm working out new crafts. And I got a couple ideas, a couple irons in the fire, but feel free to stay along for the ride if you want. You can, like you said, follow me on my socials. Everything's over there.
Tell us what those are.
Tell us. That's what I was about to say next. Where do people find you?
My Instagram is EMMY.Rae, RAE. And then for all documentary information, it's all Stop the Bleed doc. And there's a website as well. All of it's linked to each other. So find one and you'll find them all. But yeah, that's where you find me.
Awesome. Well, that's it for this time, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Those of you that are watching on watching the video version, if you want to get in contact with us, I'm Becca Meyer on all social media. Yep. He's Balding Ewok.
Yep.
If you want to send us an email and ask us a question, or send us your film to take a look at, so we can maybe talk to you on our show, it is Film Reverie podcast.
Yes.
Is it Film Reverie podcast? It's been a long time since I've said that. It's Film Reverie podcast at gmail.com. And that's it. If you want to check out our website, it's smuentertainment.com. And that's it for this time. I keep wanting to call you Emmy. Do you go by Emmy?
I go by a bunch of different nicknames. You can call me Emmy. You can call me Ray, whatever you want.
I would call you Ray.
Sure. Yeah. Go for it. That's what's having me.
But thank you so much for coming on. We will talk to you again soon. Good luck. Be well. Have fun. And that's it for this time.
Thanks.
Yep.
Cut. Film Reverie Podcast is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckemeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes, and be sure to click like or subscribe wherever you find us. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next week with another episode of Film Reverie.
The end.